All right. All right. Welcome back to the channel. Bob Arum up early in the morning telling some lies. Let's talk about what he had to say about Terence Crawford and Manny Pacquiao in this video. All right, welcome back. So, Bob Arum gave an interview on Fight Hype. It was put out early this morning on Fight Hype. Fight Hype has actually been doing a lot of interviews, and I've been having a good time listening to the interviews. This one, not so much, man. I'm not sure. I don't know the guy's name that did the interview. I do think it is the actual guy that owns Fight Hype, but this interview, you're letting Bob Arum slip on some stuff, man. You really let him slip on some stuff that was obviously not true. But hey, man, what can you do? Bob Arum was talking about Manny Pacquiao, or talking about what was going to happen with Terence Crawford moving forward. He talked about the potential fight for Terence Crawford and PBC fighters, and how now that we are under this particular situation, as far as this virus is concerned, and it's going to take a long time before people get back to boxing, and there's been a lot of fights that have been missed, and I can only assume that he's also meaning that there's been a lot of money that has been lost, that the PBC and Top Rank should be able to work together more easily to get these big fights, to get some of these big fights done. His rationale is that because you've lost so much revenue, that people are going to want to make the bigger fights, sooner. And in a way, I have to assume he couched it in the way that you needed to have these big fights to get fan interest going again. My personal thing is that I think that they need to have these big fights, and so in order to pay their bills, because it's the big fights that bring in the most money, right? And the smaller fights, a lot of these smaller fights are fights, they can't be making that much money on some of these smaller cards, right? So they are obviously going to want, because they missed out on all those smaller cards, because before there was a lot of there were fights happening pretty much every week in 2000 and 2019, with DAZN having a card every, at least 1 week in a month. PBC had a fight card or two every month. Top Rank had fight cards twice a month. There was a lot of smaller fights going on, and a lot of television revenue coming in from those fights, from DAZN, from ESPN, from Fox, and from Showtime. And with that cutting off, they got to find a way to make some of that money back, because you can't stay in business. It's not just a case that you can cut down and stop spending money and everything's just going to stay there. You've got ongoing expenses. You got employees certain vital employees that you still got to pay for, right? All of those type of things. You're going to want to make your money back. So he feels like Top Rank and PBC will be able to work, better to make those big fights. And he's talking about specifically in the welterweight division, the fight between Terence Crawford, and he said, now the three fights that he talked about was Terence Crawford and Sean Porter. He said is a very doable fight. Terence Crawford versus Keith Thurman is a very doable fight. He said that there's going to be some problems with a fight with Kell Brook, because you don't know whether or not they're going to be able to have the fight in the United States, or where they're going to have the fight in the UK. His thing is with Kell Brook, where are you going to have the fight? Because right now there's a lot of borders closed, so people may not be able to get, like Kell Brook may not be able to get into the United States along with the rest of his team, right? Or vice versa. If the fight was in the UK, Terence Crawford and his sparring partner, he probably could get a sparring partner over there, but his manager, his family, his trainer Bomac, right, his three trainers, whether or not they'll be able to get over there, right? So he said that the Kell Brook fight is going to be is more up in the air, because of the fact that it involves citizens from two different countries, and there'll be a question about where the fight could happen. Now this is where the story came in, though, when he talked about Manny Pacquiao. Now he said the same thing applies to Manny Pacquiao, right? That Manny Pacquiao's from the Philippines, and there'd be a question about whether or not where the fight could be, but he said that he was told by Manny Pacquiao's advisors, and he said it with like, you can tell he wanted to spit or something when he said the word. It's like whatever they are, his advisors, whoever they are, said that Manny Pacquiao might be open to fighting Terence Crawford. So according to Bob Arum, that fight might not be as probable as the fight with Sean Porter and Keith Thurman, but it is it is something that is a possibility. Now, this is where I say that the interviewer let Bob Arum get away with a lie, because the interviewer, I think it's Ben Thompson, I think that's his name, but the owner of Fight Hype, or the guy that gave the interview, asked Bob Arum about Manny Pacquiao and the rumors that when Manny Pacquiao was with Top Rank, that Manny Pacquiao didn't want to fight Terence Crawford, and Bob Arum said, well, there's some truth to that. I'm not sure, who it was, whether it was his advisors or whether it was, Manny that didn't want to fight him. But, there was, we weren't able to make the fight. But now with the PBC, we think we can make that fight. That's not true, what he said right there. Either that's not true, or what he said about him killing that fight between Terence Crawford and Manny Pacquiao isn't true. One or the other is not true, because it was in another interview that Bob Arum gave, he said he killed the fight because he and another matchmaker, the matchmaker is slipping my mind right now, but it is a guy that I thought it was interesting because it was a guy he mentioned who is a matchmaker. And I think he might actually be out of Nebraska. And he said this guy was one of the people that was the cause for Top Rank's offices to get raided by the FBI. So this is the guy that he mentioned, said, we know what that would be, and that would be a loss for Terence Crawford. We don't want to see, that'd be a loss for Manny Pacquiao. We don't want to see Manny Pacquiao get hurt, how much, sorry, man, I got a text at the time, man. I'm sorry, man. My work phone has been going crazy. But anyway, long story short of it is, man, Bob Arum is the one that cut that fight off. It wasn't Manny Pacquiao. It wasn't Terence Crawford. It was because, and it's my belief that it was because Manny Pacquiao, because he didn't want to feed Manny Pacquiao to Terence Crawford, because he really didn't have much intention. He is never treated or acted like Manny Pacquiao, like Terence Crawford was somebody he really needed to promote, somebody that he needed to push out into the forefront of into the forefront of the boxing world. He's not actively engaged in getting Terence Crawford ranked highly in the pound for pound list, right? He's not paying a lot of money to top quality fighters for these guys to get into the ring, just not doing what's necessary to get Terence Crawford to having that huge name. Now, the other thing that I found crazy about that interview is that the interviewer was acting as if, because he asked a reasonable question. He said, is the fight between Errol Spence Jr. and Terence Crawford big enough for this fight to happen? Right? And Bob Arum's answer was, that it really didn't matter at this point in time because, whether the pie is big or the pie is small, at this stage, we need to make these big fights because we missed so much time in boxing. He wasn't talking just about Top Rank, again, he was talking about boxing in general. So he said, the pies really don't matter. You get a big pie, small pie, what difference does it make? And my thing was, when the pie, my thing issues with the question. It wasn't with his answer, right? Because I know more than likely Bob Arum's going to want to make a bunch of big fights because Bob Arum got to earn some money because Bob Arum has a lot of stuff coming out of pocket, right? So Bob Arum's going to want to make his money back. So Arum's going to want to make big fights. But if there's an issue about who the big money guy, about somebody, the fight being big enough, it ain't Errol. Ben Thompson was asking him, what does Errol Spence Jr. and Terence Crawford got to do to get this fight bigger? Nothing. Terence Crawford's got to do something to get that fight bigger. Terence Crawford. And that's because of exactly what I just mentioned. The fact that Top Rank and ESPN have never promoted Terence Crawford in a way that made it made it seem like they seriously wanted him to be either a major pay-per-view star or even the major star, the number one guy in his own stable, right? Right now, he's the number 3, maybe the number 4 guy in their stable, despite being easily the best fighter that those guys have. It's absolutely crazy. But anyway, that's what Bob Arum said. He says he thinks that the Manny Pacquiao fight is doable. I personally don't think so. I think he needs to look at Keith Thurman. I think he needs to look at Sean Porter. And yeah, there's an issue with the Kell Brook thing, but also, and I'll save this for another video, that if there's an issue with Manny Pacquiao and Terence Crawford, well, guess who there's an issue between? Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury. And dude, Tyson Fury might have really played himself. But I'll save that for another video. You let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.